Now that we've got our profile view, view model, and our CloudKit manager, again, to a respectable state, not claiming they're 100% done, but way better than they were. The next step in that process is to actually start handling our alerts and showing them. And we're also going to show a loading view, for when the profile is being pulled in. And we'll be reusing that loading view for other screens as well, but we're going to establish that here. So let's handle that one first, actually. So I'm going to minimize some folders here, but we want to go into views, get rid of minimize screens, not get rid of them. Into the custom views here, do a Command N for a new file, new SwiftUI view, hit next, call this loading view, hit create. Okay, we got a blank slate here. Now this is a view that I pretty much copy and paste from project to project. It is the bare minimum you should have for a loading spinner. Of course, if you want to get more creative and designer-y, you can have an animation for your spinner, maybe have some different graphics, some text on here. That's all fine and dandy, but this is the basis of it, right? This is always the starting point and kind of the bare minimum. So let's build that. So pulling up the screenshot, this is a Z stack. So the background of the Z stack, it just fills up the whole screen, but it's a 90% transparent view, right? So, and it'll be system background. So if in dark mode, it'll be black, in light mode, it'll be white. Because I still want you to kind of see what's behind the loading screen, just a stylistic preference. You can make it fully opaque if you don't want to do that, but I like to have it a little bit see-through. So again, the bottom of the Z stack is that view, and then the top of the Z stack is the spinner. So let's create that Z stack. So that is a color and dot system, too many systems, background, and that is dot opacity of 0.9, and then dot ignores safe area. So fill up the whole screen, be 90% opaque to show a little bit through it. So that's my background. And then here's where the progress view comes in. So it is that progress view, there you go. And you can give a progress view a style. So for us, we want to do dot progress view style, right? And we'll initialize circular progress view style. And you see the initializer there takes in a tint, or it can just be the default color. We want it to be a tint of our dot brand primary. If you wanted a different color, cool. But we're going to go with brand primary. Now, if I pull up the preview here, I guess I should have had that going from the start so you could have seen that. So you can see that's quite small. If that's the style you want, cool, you're done, leave it. I want to scale it up just a little bit. So I'll do a scale effect to where I take in a CG float, and we'll do 2. So basically make it 2 times as big, and you can see what it did. Now that looks dead center of the screen, that's fine. However, one thing that happens, and you'll see on our profile screen, is when we have the navigation bar up there, now it's centered in everything below the navigation bar. So it looks like it's actually lower than it should be. It doesn't look like it's going to be on the center of the screen when there's a navigation bar. So to handle that, I do a dot offset, not an X, we don't care about the X axis, and then the Y, we'll do -40 to move it up, and you see it moved it up. And here's the way I look at it is when there's a navigation bar, it will look centered. And when there is not a navigation bar, it'll look just like slightly above centered, which I think that still looks fine. For some reason, when it's slightly above center, it doesn't look as weird as it does when it's below center. Like it definitely looks wrong when it's below center. When it's above center, it looks fine. So that is our loading view. And then how we use this loading view is we just slap it on top of a view when something is loading. So let's go back to our profile view. So again, in our screens, profile view, not the view model. Again, I want my view model on top, just my weird little quirk. So my profile view, we can get rid of the preview. We don't necessarily need that. So like I said, by us slapping this loading screen on top while it's loading, we're gonna need to put this whole thing into a Z stack, right? Because if we want to slap something on top, it's gotta be in the Z stack. So our entire V stack here is gonna get put into a Z stack. And this is also why I save the 100% refactor for when I'm fully done with the screen, because you see now that we're putting everything in a Z stack here, let me actually grab this whole V stack. And by the way, I'm just going right above the navigation title because I know that's the end of my V stack, because now all that stuff will be put onto the Z stack because that's kind of like the root view. So cut it and then paste it into the Z stack. So like I said, we're starting to get more nested, and the more nested I get, that is going to inform how I want to refactor the screen to make it more usable. So again, that's why we do the last 10% polish once we're fully done and we see everything. So again, the base layer of our Z stack, is our V stack. Well, we want to slap the loading view on top. So here's the end of the V stack. Get rid of that space right there. So on top of it, we want to put our loading view. And I will pull up the preview again. I probably shouldn't have closed it out. just to show you like what this looks like, right? You're going to see all you're going to see is our loading view because we put it right on top of everything, right? You're not going to see our profile view at all. Well, I guess you can see that 90%. I guess this was a good thing to show. You can see how that 90% opacity, again, that's a stylistic choice. And now you can see we have our navigation bar, like I mentioned. And the navigation bar takes up like the top 10 to 15% of the screen. It's a big chunk. And so now you can see because we moved the offset up on our spinner, it still looks centered. If we didn't do that, that spinner would be like down here somewhere and it would just look weird. So now we're showing the loading view all the time. Of course, we don't want to show it all the time. We only want to show it when we're actually loading. So we're going to need a variable is loading. So we know to conditionally show that, right? So we'll do something like if we're going to put it on our view model.is loading, and I'm going to do this as a one-liner, show the loading view. Now we're still going to get errors. I can get rid of my preview here because we don't have anything called view model is loading. So let's fix that. So view model, go up to our variables here. And I always like to have my alert item as the last one. That's why you see me put it up here. Again, weird little quirks with your coding style. I'm sure you have them too. These are mine. Is loading, and that is going to default to false. So now where we want to use is loading is when we start our network calls. So here in create profile, let's kind of walk through this, right? Okay, we're checking if it's valid. If it's valid, we're just returning, we're not making a network call. Cool. We're checking to make sure we got the user record stuff. If it's false, we're not making a network call. So the network call doesn't begin until we get ready to call batch save. So right above this, I want to do is loading equals true. That's going to trigger the redraw to show our loading spinner. And then while this is being fired off, our loading spinner will be up there. So I want to make is loading false once we get back, this result. And that is a UI update. So we want to do that on the main thread as well as this entire like switch statement. So let's do that. Dispatch queue.main.async. And again, so the first thing we're going to want to do is loading equals false because we're no longer loading. And then let's move this whole switch up here because again, in this one, we're showing alerts, which we'll do here in a second. And even when we show alerts, that is a UI update. So you want to be on the main thread for that. Oh, and because we're in this closure here, we're going to implicitly capture self. We're going to need that down here anyway. Okay, so that's the process of how that works. Now, a little stylistic thing I like to do, this is a little bit extra. If you disagree, completely fine. Is loading equals true, is loading equals false is pretty straightforward. I think it can be more expressive. So anytime I have these kind of stuff on my view model, I like to do little helper functions down here. So we'll do private, I'll move it up for my face, private func show loading view, and that will just be is loading equals true. And then, same thing down here, private func hide loading view, and this is loading equals false. And again, these are just helper functions to make it super clear. I understand you could have written this like show loading view where you passed in a Boolean and then you act accordingly. That's fine. I like it to just read better. Show loading view, hide loading view. And that's the whole reason I did this. It's just readability and understandable optimization, I guess. So now instead of is loading equals true, it's just more expressive to me if I say show loading view and then down here, hide loading view. Very clear what's going on. So we're going to use that down here as well, right? So when we get a profile right here, right before we start our network call, we'll say show loading view. And then, we get our network call back, we'll do hide loading view. Like I said, just to me, that reads a lot better. Okay, so that is our loading view being handled in our 2 network calls so far. Remember, we still got to do one more where we update a profile. We haven't gotten to there yet. So yeah, our get profile has the loading view and then our create profile. So when we run this, we're all set up to get profile. So we should see our loading spinner for like half a second. I'm on pretty fast internet, so it should be pretty quick. So pay attention. When we go to our profile, it'll pop up really quick. And something I'm going to put into the notes here is how you can test this. It's something called network link conditioner, and I'll show you how to basically make it so you can have a slow internet connection on your computer for your simulator or on your actual device. I did a YouTube video all about that. I'll link to it. Again, I don't want to go down so many rabbit holes here, but at least I can point you into the directions where you can go down the rabbit hole should you want to test your app in poor internet connections. Okay, pay attention. As soon as I tap the profile, you're going to see the loading spinner for like half a second. All right, 3, 2, 1. Okay, you saw it for like half a second and then it popped up. But that loading spinner also blocks all the UI, right? So I can't like hit create profile while it's loading. So loading spinner is in place. You'll notice what we need to do though, and this is going to happen in the next video, is we need to obviously make this say update profile and then, not call the create profile function. We need to call the update profile function, which we haven't written yet. So that UI tweaks are happening in the next video. This video is all about getting that loading spinner up and running and showing you how to use it, because we are going to use that on other screens as well. And then handle our alerts. So let's stop this, get that down. Now it's alert time. So I have comments where I need all my alerts. So let's take a look here. We're going to need one for when the user record comes back, like we don't have a user record. We're going to need one for create profile successfully or unable to create profile. And then this is that same user record one. We're going to need probably 4 or 5 alerts. I guess we'll come back and do them one by one. So the first one is, hey, we don't have a user record. So we'll minimize our screens here, go to utilities, alert item. We're basically just going to, start copying and pasting the structure here and create new messages. So copy, paste. We're going to call this no user record, and we'll title it that. We'll say no user record, because this will pop up when they're not logged into iCloud, right? If so for some reason on their phone or your simulator, you're not logged into iCloud, you're not going to have a user record, so you can't create a profile. So that's what we're going to basically say here. Say you must log into iCloud on your phone in order to utilize Grub's profile. Please log in on your phone's settings screen. And essentially, we just want to tell them what's up and how they can fix it. Okay, back to the view model. That was the first error, right? And we'll kind of do this as we go. So alert item equals alert context dot no user record. And I know we're going to copy and paste this because we are going to use it down here as well in the get profile function where there is no user record. Okay. And now the next one, moving on down, is when they successfully create a profile record. Cool. So back to alert item. Again, we're going to copy the structure, paste it, and you'll notice we still are in our mark of profile view errors. That's still relevant. So we want to do create profile success. And sometimes, because I'm so crazy, I guess, is I will name my stuff to make sure I don't mess up my my alignment. Of course, I could just have it over 1, but I do take naming into account with that. I know, I'm insane. Okay, so this one will be, we'll say, profile created successfully, exclamation point. I mean, if you wanted to get fun, you could put some nice little emojis in there, whatever. We're just going to do that. And then the message will say, your profile has successfully been created. Yay. Now back to the view model. We'll add that in here. Alert item equals alert context dot create profile success there. And then now we can get rid of our break because now we actually have something in there. Okay, now the next one here is if it is a failure. So back to the alert item. See, this error handling is pretty tedious, I know, but it is part of that second 90% that I always talk about, how there's the first 90% of the app where like you get it working, it feels like you're about done. And then there's the second 90% where you got to do all the tedious stuff, which this falls under. So I definitely don't want to skip over this. This is part of life as a developer, but I am kind of finding a happy medium because you can show alerts for every possible failure case. We're kind of generalizing these alerts, if you've noticed, and I'm doing that just for my sanity and your sanity, so we're not spending hours writing alerts, but I do want to let you know that is a fact of life as a developer, this kind of stuff. Okay, so this will be create profile failure, and we'll say add a period after that. I don't like putting periods in my titles, so we'll fix that real quick. So we'll say failed to create profile, and we'll say, we were unable to create your profile at this time. You can do again /n, please try again later, or contact customer support if this persists. So again, just another example of some of the stuff you can say in your error messages. So let's go back and use this into our view model. Alert item equals alert context dot create profile failure. Okay, we have 2 more, and then we're done here. Like I said, it could be worse. You could have a lot more. Actually, there's only 1 more. We aren't showing an alert here. I just made a wrong assumption, right? So if there's no reference to a user profile, that means they haven't created one yet. So we don't want to show an error, right? They're just going to get the blank screen. So what happens is on a peer, get profile gets called. If they have a user record, which everyone should, cool. But if they don't have a reference to a user profile, that means they haven't created a profile. So we just want to return, right? We're not going to show them an error or anything like that. We just want to stop the function. So we're not going to call like the network call and all that stuff. So exit out of the function. We're done here because they need to create a profile. So my bad. We don't need an alert for that one, but we do need one for this failure on like failure to retrieve profile. So the last alert item we need is failure to get profile, essentially. So copy that, paste, unable to get profile, tab that over, and we'll say that. Unable to retrieve profile. And then we'll have kind of the same line, right? Instead of we were unable to create your profile, we'll say we were unable to retrieve your profile at this time. Please try again later or contact customer support if this exists. You could also say something along the lines of, please check your internet connection. I'll delete that and say, and try again later, or contact customer support if this persists, right? I'm just trying to give different examples of what you can say in your error message here. But that is going to be our unable to get profile message. So back to the view model. By the way, I'm using my tabs up here if you're wondering how I'm switching back and forth. And now this last alert, we will say alert item equals alert context dot unable to get profile. So one quick scroll through of the view model here, right? In our create profile. Yep, we got on our alert there. We have an alert there. Alert in the success and the failure case for when they create a profile. And then we're using our no record alert here. And then success case, we populate the UI there and show an alert that we were unable to get profile. Okay, so our alerts are handled. And like I said, alerts are an ongoing thing. We're by no means done, but I'm trying to do it little by little. So again, it's not like 3 straight hours of nothing but alerts at the end of the course. So as we kind of, start coming to the end of each view, we'll start handling the alerts properly. And again, I'm trying to strike a balance of not going too crazy with the alerts, but want to be very, very clear in the real world on production apps, you definitely should go crazy on alerts. So that wraps up the loading view and the alerts. In the next video, we're going to work on tweaking our UI to change from create profile to update profile. And we're actually going to implement the update profile, network calls and functionality, all that stuff.